Monster Mile, Dover, Delaware, scrubbed free of dust and rubber debris by an overnight rain that forced cancellation of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series to tonight. So the only on-track activity so far today has been qualifying for the Nationwide Series, single car qualifying. So the temperature is going to bust 80 degrees today, winds out of the northwest and sunny skies, but a green racetrack for NASCAR's Sprint Cup Series to deal with through 2 rounds of practice. Hi everybody, Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you on the final day of school for 2009. We could get maybe just a little sillier than usual because
we just don't need to get any more demerits.
The final weekend of NASCAR on Fox, right? No detention after today. But let's deal with this racetrack, Darrell. Not only is it a green racetrack, but through all of the activity on track so far, no rubber has been worked into the racetrack at all, it seems.
Yeah, and that's a shame because it's going to give these teams such a false reading, really. And the driver, I mean, the feedback for a race setup is really the driver. What is he comfortable with? How loose can he stand the car? And those types of things. And you're going to get a lot of bad information based on track conditions right now. So you're just going to have to work through it. You're going to have to be sure not to panic. If you got good notes from the races here before, use those because you're going to get some bad information this morning, I'm afraid.
Well, and I think that's where if I was one of the crew chiefs of the 14 drivers doing double duty, I would be pretty pleased. This is one racetrack I'm not crazy about seeing my driver run the Nationwide Series race because Sunday's race is so physically demanding. But getting that information from those 200 laps in that Nationwide Series race, or maybe the case of Kyle Busch, Mike Bliss, actually doing triple duty here this weekend, that's going to be good information. I think what you've got to do during these practice, you got to watch tire wear, especially on the right rear with this green track, but you just got to A-B things and then build that note and then sit down tonight and say, I think this is the way we need to go.
Well, it's been a busy weekend at Dover so far. Wars of words and a lot of on-track action. We're going to get updates on 2 teams at either end of the starting lineup and of the spectrum. Let's go down. I think first we're going to Chris Devoda.
That's right, Mike, and I'm going to start with the good end. That would be Juan Pablo Montoya qualifying third. Juan said when trying to find the words to talk about this car and this team, he literally cannot describe it, and that's a good thing. They have been working so hard, not just for race wins. This is a team that is desperately trying to make the chase. Juan Pablo Montoya and his team planning to do about a 20-lap run. Why is he good here? He said one word, grip. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum, Matt Yoka.
And when you look at championship point leader Jeff Gordon's racing resume here at the Monster Mile, 4 wins on the concrete, tied for most of any driver since they put concrete on this place. But he had the E-ticket ride. Super G had the Super Wall Slapper, a very hard hit in qualifying on Friday. They've gone to the backup. So I asked car chief Jason Burdett, every car in your stable is a stellar mount, but what's the history on this car? So to be honest with you, we were standing around talking about that today. We have no idea really the last time it actually raced because it's been so long. It's been our official backup car. It's logged more miles going down America's highways than at a racetrack. But this team on their way back in now after running some initial laps, but they've got a great note list to go from yesterday because the track conditions, like you guys mentioned, just like yesterday, green starting out with practice.
Now, thanks, Matt. That won't be the case tomorrow because there are 2 races to be run here today, the makeup for the truck race and the Nationwide race, so they may see a very different racetrack here tomorrow. But Jeff Gordon, that car just got away from him and in a position, Darrell, where it didn't look like there was any way. I think he was lucky to get that car sideways into the wall instead of going straight in there with the right front.
That's been my experience with this concrete racetrack. Feels good, feels good, turn, snap. Just snaps right out from under you. And that's one thing, Larry, I was thinking, Juan Pablo keeps saying that there's a lot of grip here. I think there's a lot of drivers that would like to drive his car to see what that feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when I say he got lucky, it took a lot of skill in a very short distance to get that car into the wall sideways. And let's not forget, since the start of the season, Jeff Gordon's complaints about his back have been intensifying, as I can believe the pain has been. He did have last week a facet injection to help deal and manage with that pain. That did provide some help and some relief. has all that been negated by this crash yesterday?
Well, and I think you may have pointed out that was in an area of the racetrack where we don't have the safer barrier. That was a solid wall he had over there. But when I think about that backup car with today's car, it's not a big deal to unload a backup car because these cars are so much the same. Two things they're going to have to work hard on. They're going to have to work on, guess what? Driver comfort, making sure his seat, his steering column, all those things are right in that backup car. And the other thing, we hear it week in and week out, is the timing of the bump stops in the front. Getting that thing to settle down just before the splitter bottoms out, making sure the travel's just right in the front end. That's the two things they're going to have to focus on these two practices.
Well, let's move on to some good news. We joked yesterday that David Reutimann backed into the pole here at Dover. Of course he did, and he drove his heart out and won the pole position, his first at Dover, and I believe the third of his third career pole in 76 starts. Quite a performance, Darrell, not just for David, but look how far that team has come.
Well, you know, we've talked about some of the new people that Michael has hired up there. The gentleman came from Formula One who was really tuned into how Toyota ran their Formula One team and the processes and the procedures. I think that's where this team is much better now. They have processes, procedures, and things in place to get cars ready, to prep cars. They're doing a lot of in-house work, getting a lot of things straightened out, and they've got great cars right now. I think that anybody in that garage area a year ago would have said, I don't want any part of that. I think a lot of guys are starting to say, you know, they got a lot going for them.
Well, you know, Krista reported on Montoya trying to fight to get in the chase. This is the car that sits 13th right now, only 6 points out of the top 12.
Kyle Busch, Casey Kane, and David Reutimann are the fastest in this practice session so far. Speech presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice is brought to you by the Harley-Davidson Super Ride. Take the ride of your life today. And by Coors Light, introducing the Coors Light 12-ounce cold activated can. When the mountains turn blue, your beer is as cold as the Rockies. Denny Hamlin bringing the FedEx office Toyota out onto the track. He has run 6 laps and is 12th in this session.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, I can tell there is a lot of scrambling going on in that garage here because we're only 10 minutes into this practice, and there's only 3 or 4 cars out there right now, which tells me there's a ton of work going on down there right now.
Well, let's get down there with Krista.
Mike, I can tell you a little bit about our pole sitter, David Reutimann, as he brought his car in. The team telling him at one point in that run he was the best car on the track. His entry is good. David said the exit is floating a little, but not bad. Where do they need the work? The center of the corner.
You know, Mike, I'm glad he's on the pole because he could do a lot of things he's never done here before. He can lead a lap. He's never done that here before in the Cup Series. And he could have a top 10 finish based on his starting spot, and he's never had that here before either. So even though he runs well here, he could do a lot of things this weekend that would change his stats a little bit for this racetrack.
Larry, let's talk a little about this surface and about this tire. As you look at Dover Downs and the whiteness of the concrete, it's not just that there was no rubber scrubbed into the groove. There was no, I mean, now, and it got washed away by the rain. There was no rubber put down. We saw a lot of rubber dust, not even the little gooey marbles that we usually see. If we run the truck race and the nationwide race today, and the track still looks like this tomorrow morning, what does it mean for our race on Sunday?
Well, there's going to be a huge concern of tire wear because when you do not, when we don't have rubber that goes into the surface, that enhances tire wear. That's what happened at Indianapolis Motor Speedway last August. The rubber never went in the racetrack. It was a powder floating through the air. This is the same tire package left and right that we ran here in the fall. We kind of went through this in the fall, and about halfway through that nationwide series race, it started taking rubber.
Yeah, rubber's supposed to be sticky. When it gets hot, it's supposed to be sticky. You see the guys all the time in the pits taking that little torch and cleaning all the debris off the tires. Tires aren't supposed to be dusty.
Right.
And right now they're dusty. And so hopefully that will improve as things go along here.
Want to take a little ride with Clint Boyer?
Yeah, I do. Kind of watching him a little bit here. You can see how much, I mean, that's the thing that's tiring about this racetrack. You see how hard he's working, and see how he has to hold the car to the right going down the straightaway? That's because the straightaway is banked. So when you get in the turn, and you can just see he is working hard in there, and you got to do that for 4 hours. Forget how many miles it is. It's 4 hours, and you never relax. This place just keeps you on edge all the time. Think about what happened to Jeff Gordon yesterday, and everybody feels that. That car snaps out from under you sometime and takes your breath away.
All right, let's compare Clint Boyer with Mark Martin. We're going to go for a ride with Mark here.
And you know, it takes 23.5 seconds to get around here, Darrell. You probably spend 2/3 of that time in the corners.
Now, see, this is, again, I know we talk about this every time we look at people in there. This is old school. Watch how Mark takes his right hand, drops it over there on the left side of the steering wheel, and just pulls with both hands. Basically, he's pulling under with his left and down and pushing down with his right. Car snapped a little bit with him there off the corner. But that's kind of old school racing, where you really crank it hard left. When these guys, sometimes they kind of make me question when they say my car won't turn. I just sometimes question, are you turning it? You know, are you cranking on the wheel? Because you got to crank these things.
One thing I like about Mark down the straightaway, his hands are at 9 and 3. So when he gets into the corner, he can turn either way, depending on what the car does. Mother Nature being much more cooperative today. The Camping World Truck Series will race today. Chris Devoda leads the setup at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, followed immediately by the AAA Insurance 200. The NASCAR Camping World Truck Series only on Speed. Rain delayed to this afternoon. Coverage at 5:30. Kurt Busch right now is 15th in this practice session, Matt.
Third in the points, running 6 laps before they pulled it back in. He said the car turned so well in the center of the corner, but his issue, he wanted to work on the exit. That's what was pushing, so they made a shock change, and they spent a lot of time. Jeff Thousand, one of the longtime crew members on this team, and a number of other crew members spent a lot of time under the back of the car making some adjustments, just trying to work that push out of the back of the car, but they're pretty pleased so far in this session.
And that right front shock is a big deal. And Larry, you know this. First of all, it's got shims in it that you can shim the front of the car to limit the travel. You can put 100,000 shim in, you can take a shim out. Plus, that's the shock that lets the car set down on the bump stop. So, and Larry, you mentioned this before, the timing of all that is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens in milliseconds. So that shock has got to know to let that thing down on that bump stop at exactly the right time.
We talked about this yesterday during practice. One of the things that teams will be scrambling with here in both these practices, in the perfect world, you sort through different packages during this practice, and then you fine-tune the next practice, is the shock package. Because of the seams in this concrete, they're going to be working with a lot of shock absorbers. They'll be working with air pressure, probably two of the most critical things you work with here.
There is Kyle Busch. He's run 22 laps, and he is the fastest car in practice. Mark Martin on his way back out. Krista?
Mark Martin, after that run, said that the front end was better, but that the back end needed to be hooked up in the track more. And I know, Larry, Darrell, for you guys on trackside last night, Mark and Alan Gustafson, his crew chief, talked a lot about the respect and trust they have for each other. Well, Mark is leaning on that right now. When he came in, he said, Alan, I'm going to need you to throw some ideas at me.
You know, you're right, Krista. We had both those guys at the same time. And Darrell, you can tell when a relationship is put on, or you can tell when a relationship is real. And the relationship between those two guys is the real deal.
It really is, and you can see it in Alan's eyes when he looks at Mark Martin. He's almost got a smile on his face, because he knows, like he said, what a great driver I have the opportunity to work with. Not only is it going to help Mark, it's going to help Alan as he goes down the road. He's learning a lot from the master, really.
And Mark Martin was Alan's hero growing up.
Yeah.
And that just has to add, you know, to the cohesiveness of that relationship.
I don't know. Every time I got around some of my heroes growing up, I was intimidated. I just kind of stood there at awe.
You were also not working with him. You were trying to beat him.
Well, but you know what? I can relate to it, because our team, I feel the same way, especially about Darrell Waltrip and Mike Joy, who I've been together now for 9 years up here with.
Thank you, Larry.
We have a lot of fun with it. And it's a pleasure. You know what I'm seeing, Darrell? Right there, and out of 4 and out of 2. I'm seeing a rubber being put down on this racetrack. There you see a little bit, the start of a groove getting worked in there. And I'm not sure that some of that might have been from qualifying this morning for the nationwide cars, but there you see at the exit of 2, a little bit of black.
You know what that is?
Am I being overly optimistic?
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
But that's wheel spin.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
No, you're right.
Remember I told you yesterday how you come up out of that hole and it's like the car gets real light? You actually spin the tires right there.
But you know what, Darrell? I almost wondered. I've never thought about this. Do you think maybe sometimes it's much warmer today? The hotter that it is, the more conducive that maybe rubber will lay down better in hotter weather because the cars are sliding more.
Perfect guy. Well, I think the heat in the track would make the tires get that sticky I'm talking about. I heard nationwide qualifying, they were squealing the tires. I mean, you don't squeal the tires on one of these race cars. They're supposed to be digging and gripping.
Yeah, squealing is not sticking.
No. So, Larry, I think it's a good point. I think the warmer it is, the better this tire might operate.
Brian Newman, 13th in this session after running 15 laps. Kyle Busch is fastest. He's also run the most laps in this session, 23. There are a few drivers like Reutimann, Biffle, and Jimmy Johnson, 20 laps plus. And Greg Biffle will complete his 23rd lap of this practice as he brings his Ford around. He is 6th quickest. Matt?
And Kyle Busch running all 3 races here this weekend, the trucks, nationwide, and sprint cup, and he's won in all 3 divisions here on the concrete. They put a set of shocks on this car the last time before it went out. His response back to Steve Addington, it was great in turns 1 and 2. He felt like it hurt him on exit of 2, entry into 3, but he said it was just great off turn 4. They were also looking just to see where they were as far as cording that right rear tire. He's run about 25 laps. He felt like they were going in the right direction, but that's the great thing about having 2 practice sessions with the brake. You've got a chance to A/B some things, especially with the change in track conditions that we've seen, that you can really fine-tune in that final session.
Well, yesterday he ignited a war of words with Dale Jr. He was asked in a press conference, having worked with Lance McGrew, who's going to become Dale Jr.'s crew chief next week, he was asked to kind of assess their chances for future success, and instead he took a backhand swipe at Dale Jr. I'm sure you'll hear it during our pre-race show tomorrow, and it's probably in your local paper this morning. But Kyle Busch continues to be a driver whose prowess is on the racetrack and not off it.
But I think you have to remember, this may not really absolutely have nothing to do with Dale Earnhardt Jr. What car did Kyle Busch drive when he was basically told, you will not be coming back to Hendrick Motorsports in 2008?
The car that is now the 88.
And
true.
I thought that we were all looking for rivals and rivalries and words of words are part of a rivalry.
That's true.
You get in somebody's head before you ever go on the racetrack, you've won a big part of that battle.
Yes, you have.
Well, it's the storm clouds are brewing over that one. It'll be interesting as the weeks go on.
Well, it's like when I did that interview with Kyle at Talladega, and he said his brother got upset with him somewhere.
Right.
And he said he wanted to go in after the race and tell him, say, look, dude, that's how we do it up front. so, that's how he thinks.
Kyle Busch is quickest. Casey Kane second fastest in this practice. Kane will have his best start in the Sprint Cup Series tomorrow since his pole at Infineon last June. And it's not just that they have the new Dodge engines. All of this team's cars qualified in the top dozen.
10.
Top 10.
All 4 Richard Petty. I mean, I guess and this is about the time the 9 cars started sparking last year. I guess after the run they had at Lowe's Motor Speedway last week, they kind of fell victim to the weather, and they were on pit road when basically the caution came out, and they didn't stay out like the other cars did. They had a great car, but I think they're building lighter race cars. And now the 9 car has the new Dodge engine. And Casey has had some great runs here. He hadn't had good finishes. Remember when he got in the oil late in the race down in 3 and 4 leading the race? Yeah, so he's had some great runs here.
And as I watched all these in-car cameras of these drivers, of all the cars I've seen so far, I'd like to be driving his, because he looked the most relaxed. He's not jacking around on the wheel. He's just got a nice, he's very comfortable in that car. He's coming in, but I watched him run a number of laps there, and he was just really, it looked like the car was really handling well for him.
Darrell, I know you had Casey Kane and you talked to him on Wind Tunnel with Dave Despain a couple of weeks ago, and what I believe is these next couple of months, it's going to dictate Casey Kane's future, whether he stays or whether he goes.
Now, he likes it. He keeps saying he likes there, but look at him, Larry. He's got that good. Look how he's kind of got his head cocked a little left. He's got nice smooth down a straightaway. Never turns back to the right. Just got a little tug on the wheel. That's not bad. It's not a lot of push in the car. Working it a little bit. Very relaxed and very comfortable. I like what I see there. His hands. Look, his hands are loose. Doesn't have a death grip on the steering wheel. I like that.
Looks comfortable.
Casey's run 17 laps. He is second fastest, and by a wide margin. He's the quickest Dodge in this practice. First of 2 practice sessions rolls on.
This might be one of the most crowded places in the garage area, the 88. Now you see this gentleman right here. That's Lance McGrew. Now he was here with Brad Keselowski in the 25 car, runs a limited schedule. They did not qualify for this race, but Lance McGrew starting at Pocono, looks like he's getting a little bit of a jump start on it, but starting at Pocono, he will be the chief guiding the ship for this 88 team. Lance has been doing R&D. He's been looking after the 25 car. He also was the crew chief for Brian Vickers when Brian won the Nationwide Series championship in 2003.
Krista?
Right now, Dale Jr. saying his race car is tight into the turns, but really, really loose off the corners. That was what Jr. said on the radio before bringing his number 88 National Guard Chevrolet into the garage.
Work on the first problem first, right, DW?
That's exactly what they all. It took a long time for me to learn that. Fix the end that's broken. Don't
fix the middle, and you might help that exit.
Don't crutch it up with something else.
Junior getting a little rehydrated while he looks over the computer screens that the Hendrick drivers use, both to monitor the progress of theirs and other teams, and also I believe that's a tablet type PC where the driver can write notes right on the screen, and it's stored and also goes to the other team computers. A lot of teams have gotten away from radio chatter in the garage area because it discloses what's going on with their car to other teams who can monitor those open channels.
I believe Lance has jumped in there this morning and decided he's going to get a jump start on this deal, because looks like he's directing a good bit of traffic there around the race car, which is a smart idea. Since he doesn't have a car to take care of, he might as well come on over here and get started.
Well, Brian Weitzel is the designated crew chief for this weekend. Brian worked with Jeff Gordon as crew chief and won, I think, 3 of 7 starts with Jeff. So he's very, very talented. He's a key part of the Hendrick organization, but he does not desire to be a full-time crew chief. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in this mix, and it'll be kind of in flux until next weekend.
The thing we need to stress, Tony Ure Jr. is still with Hendrick Motorsports. Essentially, he and Lance McGrew they're just going to swap roles. You know, Tony is going to look after the R&D. The word is, I talked to Chad Knaus, Tony's excited about this opportunity, and he's also going to work with Brad Keselowski in the few races he runs in that 25 car.
Yeah, Brian Weitzel is a smart guy. And he has sat on the pit box with everybody at one time or another. I think he maybe with Ray back when Ray was there. And he was there, you know, he's been up there all the time as the brain trust, kind of a statistician during the races for all those guys.
Kind of taking an overview. It's like, you know, on our Fox telecast, we have a line producer, Barry Landis. We have a coordinating producer, Richie Zients, that sits on the back bench and overviews the whole telecast. Not just the nuts and bolts, but, you know, what stories aren't we telling? What could we maybe, you know, kind of help provide a little more overall guidance, and that's very similar to this situation.
I think sometimes, you know, we talk about the blind obvious, and sometimes though when you're down in the trenches, there's things going on that you don't see. It's like being it's like a coach. Everybody needs a coach. Well, that's what Brian does. He sits up on the pit box, and in Monday morning meetings, I'm pretty sure he says, well, that may be what you think happened, but here's what really happened.
Right.
And I think that's where he's been valuable.
David Gilliland having a good run here. He is 20th in this practice session. He's only run 9 laps. You know, it's kind of like, we'll go back Tuesday and we'll look at the DVD of our race and go, gee, didn't quite catch that. Didn't see that happen.
Exactly.
And that's where the folks in the truck are such a great help to us, not only in providing the replays, but helping guide us to things when we're, oh, I don't know, looking out the window at the race and maybe not directly at the screen.
Well, the job down there sitting on that pit box is the same as it is up here. We don't have time. We don't call timeout.
No.
We don't say, okay, let's slow everything down a minute while we get this right. We have to call it as we see it, as it happens. And that same way a crew chief has to do. When that car comes on pit road, he's kind of thinking what he wants to do, but what if all of a sudden he sees what everybody else is doing? He's got to make a quick change.
Right.
And that's where some of that guys in us on the box with him can help him.
Now what we're doing here, we're walking through some of the cars that were go or go home cars yesterday. They had to step it up and qualify on time. We actually had 47 cars here. The cars that did not qualify was Brad Keselowski, we mentioned, Max Pappas, Derek Cope, and David Starr. You saw the 09 of Mike Bliss. I did make a mistake early in the broadcast. Mike Bliss is only doing double duty. He's not running in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race.
Best 5-lap average. That's a good indication of who's going to be tough tomorrow. And look at the Roush Fenway foursome. 4 cars of their 5 in that top 10, led by Matt Kenseth.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. You know, the Roush Fenway, they won the first 2 races of the season. Daytona 500, Auto Club Speedway with Matt Kenseth. They have been shut out as far as wins in the Sprint Cup Series since that second race. We felt like, based on how they ran here in the fall, same tire combination. Remember the battle between Kenseth, Biffle, and Edwards at the end of that race, finishing 1, 2, 3. This would be a pretty good measuring stick to how this group is stacks up right now here at Dover.
Yeah, I don't think they get that concerned about their qualifying, to tell you the truth. I know Matt does. Now, what's he got? Like 4 poles, and maybe I think that's all he's got in his whole career. So we know when he qualifies kind of back in the pack, that's standard operating procedure for him. And so the rest of them, you know, they run good, but I don't think they put that much emphasis into qualifying.
All right, let's get down to the garage and take a look at last week's second place car, Matt.
Mike, when you talk about great coaches, that's exactly what Ryan Newman has in Tony Gibson. Week in, week out, he produced last year, so far this year. What a great season this 39 team has had. They changed the rear shocks on their previous run. Newman said he felt like that was the direction they needed to go. He finally got the security that he was searching for on entry. He felt like as the run progressed, it got tighter in the center and obviously more loose off. That's the area they're working on. They've already made a track bar adjustment. Jay Guarneri, a crew member, has already completed that. Talking about a change in the front, they're getting ready to send this car back out. They've just topped them off with some Sunoco race fuel. They're going to go back out for another run and see exactly what this change will do.
You know, Mike, we had Tony Stewart on trackside last night. Of course, Ryan Newman, the 39 car, they come in here 7th in the points, and Tony Stewart is 2nd. And we asked Tony, said, be truthful, realistic. What were your goals, your expectations before the 2009 season started? He said, we absolutely had none. I said, okay, 1/3 of the way through the season, where you're at now, what are your goals or expectations now? He said, just keep doing what we're doing. And I think realistically, this operation has an opportunity of getting both teams in the chase. And you know, before they formed Stewart-Haas Racing, Mike, Haas CNC Racing only had 1 top 5 finish their entire time of existing. And look at what they've accomplished now with the restructuring and the driver change and everything that went on over there.
Just got to keep that momentum and that excitement in the deal. That's the big thing. I know as an owner, former owner, first couple of years were fun, man. We were building things, we were running good, we were winning races. Whoa, and Smoke was about ready to have to rebuild something there, the way that car jumped around. But that becomes the challenge as you go down the road. Keeping that excitement, keeping everybody jacked up and pumped up every week. That's a hard job.
Winning sure makes it easier, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It'll make the guys work overtime.
Yep.
It'll make the guys say, I'll do whatever you want me to do, as long as things are going good.
Casey Mears, 17th in this session. He was the fastest qualified of all the Childress cars this weekend. He will start this race 17th.
Yeah, the Childress woes seem like they just moved basically from Lowe's Motor Speedway to here, especially for the 29 car and the 31 car. You know, looking at Martin Truex Jr. right now, he's 21st quickest, the one career win that he has. He got here a couple of years ago. And this car was fast right out of the truck yesterday, but it's like they lost something on into that practice qualifying. But one thing I want to say about Martin Truex Jr., Mike, you and I were talking before the broadcast. So he had somewhat of a press conference yesterday and went into the media center, and he was very open in saying, within the next few weeks, I will let you guys know what my future will be. He didn't say he's leaving Earnhardt Ganassi, but he certainly didn't say he's going to be staying there for 2010.
No, but he did say he has a plan, and all will be revealed, Krista, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Krista?
Well, Mike, it's been good news and bad news for Martin Truex on the track early in this session. He said his car turned really well. Problem is, it was only for about a lap and a half. He said then the nose would jump up in the air. He said it almost is like it would quit turning after it lands. After they made some adjustments when he came in, he said, okay, it was better in and through the center, but about the 2/3 point of the turn, that's where I need help.
You know, Larry, you were saying he didn't say he was staying, didn't say he was going. Seems to me like this sport is more about what you don't say than it is about what you do say.
It pretty much gives you the answer if you just listen closely.
As long as it doesn't have to be about what we say, that'd be okay.
Well, it's always about that.
Well, tomorrow, race day at 11:30 a.m. is a big show. You'll get the latest on Dale Jr. and his new crew chief. News from NASCAR's town hall meetings on Tuesday. David Reutimann talks about his first big win and much, much more. 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Speed. NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot.
And speaking of David Reutimann, Michael, and those guys, Steve Holland is the guy that came over from McLaren, and joined him over this past winter, and really has helped them a lot in the technical areas of getting their teams together.
There's a look at the Fast Five in practice. Kenseth, McMurray, and Biffle and Edwards are all right together in the top 10. 4 of those Roush Fenway Ford Fusions all running really well in this practice.
You know, when I look at the top 10 in practice, you know, I definitely feel like that the winner of this race tomorrow is going to come from that top 10. You would certainly lean toward the Roush Fenway group, but then you look at Kyle Busch, who's run 39 laps. He's the fastest. He won this race a year ago. Then you look at Casey Kane. He loves this racetrack. He's running good. And I'm going to tell you, don't count our pole sitter, David Reutimann, out of this thing. He's been fast every practice. He's sitting here 3rd right now and going for 2 in a row tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, Larry. I mean, that team has proven they can make pit stops with the best of them. Rodney's strategy is good, obviously. And David is driving well. The car's running well. I mean, put that all together and you can win anywhere you go. You know, one thing that we talked to Mark last night, Mark Martin, about, we asked why he was having so much trouble. Remember, he said he thinks the track's a little rougher this year than it was last year when they were here, particularly in the turn 3 area.
See Clint Boyer bouncing around a little bit there as he's about to come in at the end of this session. We've talked about the Richard Childress situation, Larry, and here's a bright spot. Boyer finishes up this practice in 10th place.
Well, this group absolutely, Mike. I mean, they're trying so hard to stop the bleeding. When you think about where they were when this season started, and in the last 5 races, they've lost 13 positions in the points. So they need to rebound, and Clint runs well here. He's won a Nationwide Series race here, and he's one of those guys doing double duty. He'll be racing later on today.
We're going to take a bit of a break here and then return to on-track action with final practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series.
This is like halftime. They're going to go to the locker rooms and talk about it a little bit.
But I do see, Mike, I do see a little black coming into the concrete surface, the white surface here, particularly off the corners. So that's good news, too.
Very good. One more practice session for the Autism Speaks 400 presented by Heluva Good here at Dover tomorrow. There's that black that you've been talking about.
I mean, that's where you're turning hard and digging hard. You got a lot of wheel in it, and you got 850 horsepower digging up out of that hole.
Up the hill.
Up the hill and down the hill and around we go.
All right, we're going to send you to NASCAR Live while we get ready for Sprint Cup final practice here at the Monster Mile.
And if you do it all right, you'll have a hell of a good lap.
You've been waiting all weekend to say that, haven't you?
Ain't going there.